Welcome to lesson 2 of Washed Up. Before we get started, I'd like to review the characters that we have here. We have the reporter, or I guess she's not a reporter. It looks like a news helicopter, but it's not. It's for the TV show. And her name is Barry Blue. A very unique name. I was talking with Kevin yesterday about how sometimes actors don't use their real names. Then we have this family here. This family is the Lou family. And we have Mr. Lou. We have Mrs. Lou. And then we have Shen and his sister May. Okay. And then we have this family here. This family is the Walpole family. And they consist of Mr. Walpole, Mrs. Walpole, and Oliver. So only one kid for that family. And then we have this family down here, which that's the driver of the boat. It's really just this dad and this one here, this kid here. And those are the Garcia family. And they consist of Mr. Garcia and the daughter Gabriella. Okay, so those are the people that we have. Technically, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 people that are a good part of this story, and they are all participating in a reality show, and the reality show is surviving on this desert island. So as we move forward, I would like you to listen for the words shelter and rations. We only have 2 vocabulary words today, shelters and rations. And then we have a couple of activities at the end of the reading today. I am only reading 5 pages. We're going to finish chapter 1. And you've got a sneak peek at the end of chapter 1 because I accidentally put that page on lesson 1. So without further ado, let's read. Just to go back real quick, I want to do a really quick summary. The book started off by introducing us to the idea of this survival reality show. They're going to the island, and we can see, and we read that there are a couple of different areas on the island. There's the beach, there are the mangroves, and there is the mountain. And I'll go over what all of those are later. We met the Lou family first. Mrs. Lou seems to think that Barry Blue is a super famous person, and May is a little bit embarrassed by it. And they are dropped off on the mountain. And then we have the Walpole family, and they seem very unprepared for this because they're very used to room service in fancy hotels, getting treated with treatments and pillows and towels, and so they don't really know about the simple. And then it said that the Garcias, who are right there in that boat, very difficult to see, but the Garcias are headed to the mangroves, and I'll go over what mangroves are in just a little bit. So here we are going to start with the Garcias. It was deathly silent as the skipper cut the engine, letting the boat glide gently into the mangrove swamp that would be home to the Garcias for the next 3 weeks. Mr. Garcia gazed at the muddy sludge around him, his jaw twitching. "It'll be okay, Papa," lied Gabriella, as she surveyed the murky water, so shallow that the gnarled roots of the trees snaked above the waterline like the tangled hair of Medusa. It couldn't be easy for Mr. Garcia. He had never been the adventurous type. He was happy working the same job for 20 years, living in the same house, and doing a pretty good job of raising his daughter on his own. That is, until the company he worked for suddenly shut down and he lost his job. Then a new reality series called Washed Up asked for volunteers, and Gabriella's father did the unthinkable. He applied. The tide will come in soon, said Gabriella, squinting at the solid wall of roots stretching out in front of them, so we'd better find higher ground. Meanwhile, the Lus were doing some climbing of their own. The chopper had dropped them off next to a steep mountain slope. Shen and May were as nimble as mountain goats, but Mr. and Mrs. Lu kept stopping to wave at the cameras and to catch their breath. May shivered as the wind was vicious above the tree line. Far above them loomed the snow-covered volcano. Right now, it was hard to imagine that this was once the site of a powerful eruption spewing red-hot lava for miles around. There's not enough wood here to build both a fire and a shelter, said Shen. The Lu siblings had seen enough survival shows to know they would need both soon. May glanced up. The sun would go down over the mountains in a few hours. We'll head downhill first thing tomorrow to where the tree cover thickens, she says. That's fine, said Mr. Lu. Now blow a kiss to the camera. These are the cameras flying around them like drones. Closer to sea level, Oliver Walpole hurried his mother past the scorpion scuttling across the forest floor. His mother's island euphoria would give way to utter panic if she saw any of these nasties. It's marvelous, isn't it? She exclaimed. Oblivious. Suffocating would have been a better word to describe it, Oliver thought. It was hotter here than on the beach, even though only a chink of greenish light pierced through the forest canopy. Here, let me wash that, Mrs. Walpole screeched. And before Oliver could stop her, Mrs. Walpole had spilled half of their thermos of water on the small fruit. Mrs. Walpole had spilled half of their thermos of water on the small fruit he had just picked. You shouldn't have done that, Mom, he protested a little loudly. His heart sank. Their water rations were down to half already. Many miles away, Barry Blue, in an animal print dress now, was speaking to the cameras again. Don't they look like they're having so much fun, she purred. Things always start out that way. And then a sharp glint came to her eyes as she said, but their rations will soon run out, and daylight too. And then darkness, hunger, and thirst will set in. She tittered. And that's when the real fun begins. Dear viewers, it only gets better or worse. All right, let's do some vocabulary. All right, our first word is shelter, and it's on page 14. So let me go back to page 14. Flip back just one. 14, and the word was shelter. And it's right here. There's not enough wood here to build both a fire and a shelter. So what are some words that are synonyms of shelter? What does a shelter mean? I have a safe place, an apartment would be a shelter, a house, a mansion, a trailer, a condo like what Michael lived in from Shells, a dwelling. Most animals live in a dwelling. Brian lived in a cave for a while. I have house, home, wherever you call home. Cover, tent, be your shelter while camping. Building. I have cave, and we'll put a den, like a lion's den. All right, so let me draw some lines to those. Think about what type of word this is, and some antonyms or opposites. And some opposites might be, Oops, that's not the button I wanted to hit. Opposites might be a field, something that's wide open, a dangerous place, just because I said safe place earlier. No roof, no walls maybe. Rain could get in. Those would all be antonyms. Let me switch that to red. And then we have some variations of this word. We can have shelters, more than one. We can have sheltering. The tent was sheltering us from the storm. We can have, and then we have shelter. Okay, so two variations on that. And this is a thing, right? So it's a noun. Make that big and stick it over here. And then my sentence is going to be, our shelter made of sticks did not keep the rain out. All right, and our next word is rations, and that was on page 16. So let me switch back to page 16. And rations are here. You shouldn't have done that, Mom, he protested a little loudly. His heart sank. Their water rations were down to half already. So rations, they had one thermos full of water, and his mom dumped it on the berries to clean it off. So rations are a part of something. It's your allowance of whatever that is. All that's allowed. Division, when you divide something up and use it wisely, or use it in little bits. They don't know when they're going to find more water. Food can be rationed, and water can be rationed. There are other things too, but those are the two most common. Portions, some, and split up. I did not put split up already. Split up. All right. Think of some antonyms while I connect these words to our circle. Some opposite words might be plenty, whole, enough for everyone, all of something, use it all up. Those would be some opposites. Let me switch to red. Rations are a thing as well, so this is a noun. It's how much you have of something. And we can have ration is the base word, and rationing. We were rationing out our water to last us for the entire time. And then I'm going to use it in a sentence, rations. The food rations were going fast because Ted was eating too much. That can happen. All right. Nice job. You'll want to use these two words in a sentence on your homework today. All right, let's talk about the characters and where they are. So, and how they're going to respond to their environment. So we'll start with the Lou's. We have Mr. Lou, Mrs. Lou, Shen, and May. And their environment was that they were dropped off on the mountain, right? So they have to figure out what they're going to do. One thing that Shen said was that it was going to get cold and quick, and that they needed to move back down the mountain. And they needed to do this because there aren't a lot of resources on the mountain. Now, the Walpoles were Mr. Walpole, Mrs. Walpole, and Oliver. Stretch that out a little bit. There we go. And they were left in the rainforest. Well, they were on the beach, but then they moved their way into the rainforest. Now, the rainforest is going to pose some different problems than the mountain because they are two different types of environments. Okay. And then the Garcias are Mr. Garcia and Gabriella. And they are in the mangrove forest. Or the mangrove, and that's where mangroves are a type of tree, and they usually grow where the water comes in and out. So when the tide is low and there isn't as much water, you can see more of their roots. And so that's what Gabriella was talking about, that the tide was going to come in and there was going to be more water, and that they were going to have to find higher ground so that they didn't get wet. So we're going to come back to this in a couple of lessons, but I wanted you to connect their environments to the people. All right, and we're going to be working with ing again. And adding ing to a verb shows an ongoing action happening now. So I'm going to come up with some sentences. If you were with me, you in the live lesson, you would have participated in this. But what I would like to do is we're going to name the base word and then use it in a sentence. So, for example, twitching, the base word is twitch. There we go. Maybe. Is it going to work? There we go. Twitch is the base word, and we're going to use it in a sentence. Twitch means to like shake a little bit, like our faces twitch or eyes twitch. When I get scared, my eye starts twitching. That means it's happening now. All right. What about the root for working? Would be work. And my sentence would be, I am working to pay for a new PlayStation. That's what all of you guys talk about. Working means that it's happening now, that I am doing work to pay for that. All right, the next word is doing. The root is do, and if I add ing, it means it's happening now. So doing. What are you doing after school? Okay, the next one is squinting. The base word is squint. And that's something that you do with your eyes when you squeeze them shut tight. I was squinting my eyes because, if I could spell, A-U-S-E, because the sun was bright. And then stretching, the base word is stretch. And that's like when you stretch when you wake up. I bumped my arm when I was stretching this morning. That happens to me a lot. I'll stretch and I'll end up hitting the dog cage when I'm still in bed. I stretch, and then I hit my hand on the dog cage. All right, and then our last slide today is more ing. It said adding ing to a verb shows an ongoing action. So we need to talk about which one of these are a verb. Now, be careful. I want you to tell me which ones to circle as far as which ones are a verb with ing. So let's look at each of them. We have a swing. Now, I'm talking this kind of swing, right? That is a noun. Now, if somebody's on it, moving back and forth, they are swinging, but the word swing itself, even though it ends in ing, is not a verb. So be careful with that one. The same thing with bring. If I bring something to a party, that means it is coming with me, right? But that is a verb, but it's not a verb ending in ing until I make it bringing. And then bringing looks like a double, just like swinging would, ing. So be careful with that one. Now, so that's a big fat no on that one. And then what about climbing? We climb steps, right? Climb is a verb and it ends in ing. So I can circle this as being an ing word. What about single? That's a dumb, stupid answer. Put that one in the trash. It doesn't even end in ing. And then tangling. The root word for tangling is tangle. It drops the E so you can put ing on it, and it has ing. When you tangle something, it's like putting it in a knot. So that is a verb with ing. All right, you would have done that with me if you were in the live lesson, or if you were there, you're just seeing it again. That's great. I do have a 7th slide, but alas. Oh, it is. I thought it was empty. Let's look at these real quick. So I put some pictures kind of to reflect where the Garcias and the Lus and the Walpoles are. The Garcias are in a mangrove swamp, so you can see that there's water between the tree root. Then the Lus are in the mountains, and we learned in this last one that they are near a mountain that was once a volcano. And then the Walpoles are in the rainforest. So what we're going to do, and let me look at my book real quick, is that we're going to describe how the actions of the families are related to the setting that they are in. So the Garcias are in a mangrove swamp, and the main character for that family, well, one of them, Gabriella, tells her dad, she says, we should move to higher ground. And I will go back and prove that to you. That's a quote. All right, she says, the tide will come in soon, said Gabriella, squinting at the solid wall of roots stretching out in front of them. So we'd better find higher ground. Okay, it wasn't a direct quote. Let me fix that. We'd better find higher ground. Now, Gabriella knows that the tide is going to come in. So this water that's there is going to be connected to the ocean. And when the tide comes in, the water levels are going to rise, making it a more dangerous place. Now, the Lu family, if I remember correctly, May said something about moving. May glanced up. The sun would go down over the mountain in a few hours. We'll head downhill first thing tomorrow to where the tree cover thickens, she says. So she wants to move down to the trees because she knows that there's not enough wood where they are to build fire and a shelter. So we'll head downhill first thing tomorrow to where the tree cover thickens. May says, we'll move downhill tomorrow to where the tree cover thickens. Now, Gabriella can't do that because they're not high up. They need to actually move higher. So the two families are almost doing opposites. And then the Walpoles are in the rainforest. So let me switch over to the page with the Walpoles. And the Walpoles are in the rainforest. It's marvelous, isn't it? She exclaimed, oblivious. Suffocating would have been a better word to describe it, Oliver thought. It was hotter here than on the beach, even though only a chink of greenish light pierced through the forest canopy. Here, let me wash that, Mrs. Walpole screeched, and before Oliver could stop her, Mrs. Walpole had spilled half of their thermos of water on the small fruit he had just picked. You shouldn't have done that, he protested a little loudly. His heart sank. Their water rations were halfway down. All right, so it was hotter in the jungle because the humidity, there isn't a lot of light coming in, but there's a lot of heat coming in, and it's just getting really, really humid, and they don't have the water of the ocean anymore. So it was hotter than here than on the beach. And the water is something that they need to ration. So the Walpole family is in the rainforest, and this is where I'm going to put my quotes, if it'll let me click. And it was hotter here than on the beach. So I used a quote from each family's experience so far to determine their actions based on where they are. And so the mangrove swamp, the mountains, and the rainforest. So we'll be talking about those as we continue to move through the book. You'll also have some questions on those for your seesaw assignment.